Judy, can you tell me if there are any questions, or has everybody run away frightened?
No, there is a lot of questions, and some of them concerning fever chart. So I will start with that because there is a lot about fever chart.
Yep.
Is the fever chart scale standard or customized? How to decide how big the yellow part on the fever chart should be? Is it always the same progression, or does it change depending on something? In the fever chart, I see the green area ending at about 70% of the project buffer. Shouldn't it finish at 100%? If programs systematically end with less than 70% of the buffer consumed, wouldn't it mean that duration estimation could be better estimated upfront?
Okay. Let me to answer. I'll go back and bring up a fever chart. Okay, fever chart. What colors, what shape, and so forth. Frankly, it's completely up to you. There are no written rules, no orthodoxy. People do it differently. What you have there is what we recommend in Marris Consulting. Okay, so I'll explain what's there. But frankly, it really is up to you. We have there's the world leader in luxury goods is using critical chain, and the guy in charge is Portuguese, so he said, I'm not going to have all this complicated stuff. My thing is just going to be green and red, so he just got a straight line going across the thing, and he calls it the Portuguese flag. And the bottom right hand part is green, and the top right left hand part is red, right? So he doesn't have yellow, he just does it very simple like that, right? Because after all, these are arbitrary empirical colors, right? Okay, so up to you. I'll explain what we have here, why those are the ones we recommend. The green here is just because right at the beginning, let's not get upset and call something red just because it's got 3 days late, right? It's that's life. Let's forget what's happening here. Just getting started. It's not a tiny little bit of consumption shouldn't be declaring it red, right? So that's why there's a little leeway at the beginning before getting excited, right? Because those would be small numbers, right? And so you would easily get into the red status. If red started just here, I hope everybody can see my mouse, that would happen fairly often, right? You're 2 days late or something. So that's side why we allow some green here. And at the other end, it is because we believe that, based on what happens with our clients after many years of living with a critical chain, that truly you should get into this logic of trying to finish all your projects a little early, exactly like people do when they take planes. I mean, a frequent traveler, you won't get him running down the alleys of an airport trying to catch his plane, right? He's done it so often. He ensures that he doesn't miss a plane because he gets to the boarding gate with a certain time that he's calculated, depending on the airport, whether he knows it or not. And so he finishes his project early, right, getting on the plane, and he will waste time at the end. So we strongly believe that everybody should try and aim to finish their projects a little early, because this zone up here is extremely dangerous, right? In fact, you're often still testing the product, validating it, getting it properly finished and stuff. And so you could easily have a last-minute problem. Somebody hadn't had the courage to admit there was a slight little, quick, funny little thing in the specifications, and you know. So to avoid all the bad decisions that you will take if you have to finish the project tomorrow morning, right? And we've done these things, and believe us, we've done a number of real-life projects where it was a question of life and death to finish tomorrow morning. You end up doing some pretty nasty things that you wouldn't want to write home about, right? So that is what it is, and that's why the green is here. But the person asking the question was absolutely right. You know, why don't we have green here since we're still early? It's just a precaution born from significant experience of running projects. Until it's finished, it's not finished. Okay. As to using yellow or not, we have quite a few clients that don't even use yellow, and they just have two colors, and that's my explanation. Does that cover the question, Julie?
Yes. Yes. So the next question is, how does CCPM handle projects that have significant research and development components where time variability depends on the results of experiments?
When depends on the results of experiments. Well, I don't know if you'll be able to get back to the person who asked the question. It depends what they're talking about. I'm assuming that it's something where there are iterations. You will try at a particular stage in your project. You will try a solution, and then you test it, and it works or not. Right? If it doesn't work, you just have to go back and do it again. Right? This risk management can be modeled in a certain number of ways, either as a macro task, which says that in fact there's a huge variability. That's to say, if all goes well, it will take me 2 months, but pessimistic, it's 11 months, right? Because we're not certain this is going to happen. So you can model the uncertainty by the difference between your optimistic or normal focus duration and your pessimistic one, right? So if something is extremely uncertain because you're waiting for results of experiments and all this sort of thing, you're at the frontier of science or whatever, that will be represented in your system by having huge differences between the focus duration and the pessimistic duration. And as a result, calculated through the system, that will mean you live with very big buffers, right? Very often, it is true that the projects of this world end up with a buffer that's about 1/3 of the overall project duration. Okay, that's basically the examples I've been using, right? Because that's true that a lot of projects are like that. But some have much smaller buffers. If you do aircraft maintenance on a fairly young aircraft, you're going to have more likely 15 to 20% buffer size. And if you're in developing in medicines with new molecules and stuff, you could have well over 50% buffer size, because there's so much that is unknown in your system. So you model the uncertainty that's there in that way by indicating very long pessimistic durations.
There is a few questions about implementation. So how long does it take to implement critical chain? How to implement critical chain if you have to deal with many contributing parties that are outside your company, your sphere of control?
Okay. Right. How long does it take? Because the one about outside contributors is a subject apart, an important one, which I didn't go into detail. How long does it take? Well, it depends what you mean. Actually switching on the system and getting your first fever charts can be quite quick. It depends on what your starting point was, but most companies we find already have some form of description of their models in MS Project or some other system and stuff, so they already know what the model is. Often what we find is it's quite different from one project manager to another, and there are 2 or 3 that don't actually use MS Project and stuff. But I mean, in that real world, you need to get that data together, transform it into the critical chain way. That's to say, identify focus duration, so challenge at different times. And depending on the organization, you can do that in between, let's say, 2 weeks and 3 months, that sort of thing, depending on how big and complex the thing you're dealing with is. During that time, by the way, you can do the 5 focusing steps to improve anyway, but you need to prepare the data to be able to get the thing to work as I described, and that takes that sort of time. But you won't get to these fever charts which have this nice proportion of 80% green and stuff. That won't happen within 2 weeks or within 2 months, right? That will depend significantly on how long your average project duration is. Okay, so if you are in a maintenance of planes environment, and where the longest maintenance of planes you have are 8 weeks, okay, for the largest, biggest stuff. After using critical chain over 8 weeks, everything in your system will have been planned and is being executed by critical chain, right? So everybody is actually using critical chain everywhere already 8 weeks later. Okay. Yet, if you are in pharmaceutical drug development, you might have 8 years, right, of average duration. Okay, And so before all your projects have been launched, planned and launched with critical chain, it is going to take you 8 years. Okay? And so it's going to take you that long before everything is really critical chain, because you're not really doing critical chain until you start by that initial planning stage on a clean slate. I'm going to use critical chain to plan my project, okay? Because again, I don't have time in this brief presentation to describe it, but ideally, you don't discover where your critical chain is. You choose it, okay? You say, I want my critical chain to go through this part of my system, and I don't want it to go through here, okay? So that the process has no end, right? Then you get to the continuous improvement, and you start squeezing the times down, okay? I'm sorry if that sounds like a complicated or not a proper reply to the simple question, how long does it take? But I repeat, you can get your first fever charts within a matter of weeks, certainly 2 or 3 months, the most time it should take. But then you just got the stuff, right? You haven't yet got all the results, all the reflexes and stuff, and you're just embarking on the journey. That's the first point. Which allows me, when I'm explaining that way, to switch to that second interesting question. What happens if I have outside partners, outside vendors, people who I don't control, who do part of the work, right? Which was the second part of the question, right? What happens if I'm working with a lot of different people and I only control part of it, right? That is quite simply a problem. Okay, you're going to have trouble getting everything out of critical chain if you are in that situation. Okay, because how can you go to a vendor and say, hey, I just looked at a webinar on critical chain, and you know what? I think you can do the work twice as fast, right? And as soon as you finish, give it to me. When in fact their contract is at such a price because they pretended that the work involved was going to be that much, and so suddenly they do it faster than expected. You know, you start all sorts of strange discussions. So critical chain, everything I've described was on the assumption you're in-house, you're within your people, and you can have intelligent discussions, look for a global optimum, share risks, and in a collective buffer and stuff like that, right? But as soon as you have outside people, you're not going to be able to apply it to a majority of external tasks, because you won't be able to get that honesty, that honest dialogue going about, you know, variable durations, you know, you finish when you can, I'm sure you'll do your best, and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't fit properly into contracts, okay? That's why it links in interestingly to choosing your critical chain rather than discovering where it is. Just one example, we've had many like this, and I'll give you two, right? First example, somebody making water meters, they implement critical chain, and they find that their critical chain goes through the mold manufacturer several times, and 37% of their critical chain is with this external function, making the molds for their products, so they can make their products. They didn't want that, so they took a strategic decision to create a partnership with a particular mold manufacturer, so that instead of giving 5-week lead times to make molds, took it down to 5 days. To do that, they gave them a machine, did all sorts of things. They got rid of the constraint and created a partnership with that company, so that it was basically as if it was in-house. Okay, that's case number one. Case number two is maybe a frightening one, because it's all over the place today. It's in your cars, it's in your planes, it's in your all sorts of things. It is IT, software development. Okay, 10 years ago, people used to say, "Oh, IT is not part of my core processes. I will externalize it. I will outsource it." Okay, we make handbags. We don't need to do IT. We'll just get some experts to run our IT for us. Okay. As a result, now we wake up with a lot of IT ambitions, digital ambitions and stuff, and we don't have the competencies to do the programming, develop the programs and stuff, right? So we hire some people in to write the programs for our new toothbrush or our new car or our new airplane, and they end up being on the critical chain, right? And so you've got your critical chain, which is not in-house, it's with somebody else on a subject you don't really master anymore. Basically, you're completely dependent on that. So you must avoid that sort of thing. So for me, ultimately, the beauty of critical chain is not just to do those calculations, but to think about what you're going to be doing in-house with your master, or in-house or with a partner, with a true partnership, as in the ideas that are also developed by Toyota, right? Having partnerships over the long term with your supply chain. The same thing should happen in your project environment. Okay. I hope that partly answers that one.
Okay, the next question is, what are the top 3 challenges companies face in implementing CCPM?
So God, I haven't had that question before. The top 3 challenges of implementing critical chain. I should, I've been doing this for quite a few years. It's the first time somebody's asked me like that. I'm not making it up to make it look attractive. We have very little problems with implementing critical chain. We never fail. We get people phoning us to do it, and as I've explained, as long as you explain critical chain, it makes sense to everybody, and everybody wants to do it, right? So the challenge is to get that first discussion so that people take the 1 hour, between 1 hour and 1 day, to understand what critical chain is all about, right? Because it's, as I say, it's not mainstream, right? It's not in the PMI block. So you have to decide to do it. It's part of the theory of constraints, this strange thing that's not lean, and where many people say you have to choose between one and the other, all that stuff. So the main challenge I find is just getting in this difficult world where each minute and each hour of everybody counts, is to get that quiet discussion of at least an hour and then a day to explain what it all is and why it makes so much sense. Because everybody gets seduced by critical chain once they've understood what it really is. The people who are not seduced by critical chain is simply because they don't know what it is yet. You'll get from what I did today, you must be a bit surprised by some of the shortcuts I had to take in the 1 hour presentation. But everybody who's truly understood and answering all the questions you have, right, then they can only fall in love with it. So that the challenge is getting the time required for instance, the management committee of a company to dedicate the time. It's, we've got a special boardroom or management committee version, which I do myself, which takes about between 2 and 4 hours, depending on the time. And that's the challenge there is managing to explain to them why they should try this sort of thing. Second challenge, since you were asking for top 3, is that moment when you say, okay, we now have to redefine the durations. Right, and everybody there, including George over there, who's been in the company 24 years and has always said it takes this long. I want George to tell me it's going to take this long, right? I have to say it is a challenge, because I know from many discussions from people who tried critical chain or had trouble with critical chain that they stumble there. We never have we had a problem at that stage. We've always found that people will give us more than 50% back in durations, because we've explained what it is, that it's different, that it's not a commitment, and so forth. And we got the top management to stand there and say, yes, these are focused durations. I will not hold you accountable to meeting them. You're allowed to be late and all that stuff. Okay, and that would be the second one. The third one is specific to large organizations. In an organization that's less than 500 people, you don't have that kind of madness. In a large multinational with, a 5-dimensional organizational matrix where there's always a vice president of this and a vice president of that. So it's a big boss turning up and looking at the thing and not taking the time to understand what it's all about. He'll see the buffer and he'll steal it and say, no, you're saying you could finish it there, right? Do it then, right? And so a VIP or VP coming in not wanting to know any more of the details. It's just you've got a big buffer there. Just finish it on time. Thank you. Off you go. Okay. So, well, I guess that's it in terms of timing. So, what can I say? I'd prefer to finish with this one because, frankly, I found the project environment disappointing or sad, really. Everybody addresses these projects environments as if, you know, it was doomed to failure. They're defeatists right from the start, right? There's a cynical, yeah, we'll finish on time. I mean, where the tower in Paris where we're living in is going to be renovated, okay? And you should hear the discussions about when the project is going to be finished, right? Will it be before the Olympics in 2024? It's a project, therefore nobody knows. It's going to be all sorts of fun. That is only because of the way you manage projects. Think back to the first case, the first page I showed you. This company that develops products in the real world with complicated clients that change their minds at the very last moment. They finish 98% of them on time. They do them 40% faster than they used to. It is not because it's a project that has to be a nightmare. It has to be a compromise or whatever. You can finish everything more or less on time or only have noble reasons to be late. Okay? So please, do critical chain, as I'm trying to summarize in this, because it's a fantastic way to put everything under control. And once you've got everything under control, then the real fun starts, and you can try and ensure that all your projects give fantastic deliverables, right? Your next airplane is going to be a blockbuster. Your next car is going to be the best in the world. Your next whatever. That's what it should be about, not just getting exhausted by lying to each other and screaming at each other and hoping not to finish too late and not expose the budget by too much. So as I say, that's what I'd like to conclude with. Don't just satisfy yourself with finishing your projects on time. That's by desperation. That's where you've got to, as a tiny little ambition, do some fantastic projects. And thank you very much. Okay, take care.